ahead of time, I will prompt everyone to think of questions. I love operating these talks on sort of a questions basis. So I'll give you a little quick overview of what Helium is up to, sort of how it works. But there's been so many conversations that I've already had with folks just at the conference that it's already sort of shaped the way I'm going to approach this talk. So getting right into it. As you may or may not know, I've run into people that have not even, they thought helium was just a gas. So helium is it's a deployment of wireless networks. And so we've started with LoRaWAN. And it's different than your standard deployment of wireless networks because it sort of carries this incentive model alongside it. And we do that incentive model through sort of a blockchain implementation of LoRaWAN. And no notes. This is going to be a challenge. When Helium started, we actually were trying to build wireless networks just the traditional way. We were building devices, trying to get people to buy them, go set them up. There was no sort of incentive model along it. And it was very hard to sort of see the adoption that we needed for like ubiquitous coverage of wireless networks that we want to see. So early on, Helium Inc. was building gateways. They had built about 20,000 of them, sent them out, like people bought them. They were full Helium mining gateways. People were starting to participate in the token. But it quickly became apparent that there was so much demand that companies couldn't necessarily sort of hold up the manufacturing responsibility for that gateways. So what the community pushed for and was adopted into the project was the ability for any manufacturer to come and join the ecosystem. And so early 2021, we saw the opportunity for folks to start building their own Helium gateways. And so we include folks, a lot of vendors here today, RAC, Nebra, Curlink, PyCom. There's about 30 plus manufacturers now that are all building Helium gateways. And you don't actually have to be a sort of Helium approved gateway operator to be able to participate in the Helium network. You can also set up realistically any gateway, transfer that, forward your packets towards a Helium service, and it'll activate as a data only gateway. So you don't have to participate in the sort of incentive model to use the Helium network, which is sort of another important aspect in how we saw the adoption driving forward. One thing that I want to call out, so it's this incentive model, and it gives the community a lot of authority to set up gateways and build the coverage that they need. So we see a lot of community members that want to go and deploy solutions on the network. And typically you would have to rely on the network operator. You go talk to them and say like, hey, I need this service, or you would use a service like the Things Industries. You'd set up your own gateways. In this case, folks can set up gateways and then they can sort of tell the community at large, like there's coverage available. And because the network is a permissionless model, anyone can come in and leverage that network without necessarily having to go talk to you. Of course, everything is end-to-end encrypted, so that data is yours. And this is in particular one of my favorite slides, just because it showcases some of the creativity that happens and how people deploy these gateways. And of course, they're all sharing the same coverage. So we see roofs in Ecuador to the macro site deployments and suburban homes and everything in between. So that deployment model has shown huge success across North America and Europe. We're seeing nearly 100% coverage in most major metropolitan cities. So anywhere where there's people, there are typically Helium gateways. We ran a model recently, and we sort of estimated from a population coverage standpoint, about 10% of the Earth's population is within a half kilometer of a Helium gateway. And as we all know in this audience, that you can get Helium, or you can get LoRaWAN to go a lot further than a half kilometer. So we should rerun that number with like a 5 or 10 kilometer radius, and I think it'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, this deployment model has been crazy. Every time I talk to somebody about this, I'm having to check my stats board just to see what the numbers actually are. So as of a few weeks ago, we were at about 840,000 deployed gateways globally. I think that number is perhaps surpassed 900,000. If not, we're really close. Adding about 40,000 gateways a month still right now at this point. So all of this deployment is really exciting. These are just a couple fun numbers. I won't. Oh man, I need my notes. I don't know if AV. No. Okay. I'm gonna look really quickly. Apologize. Oh yeah. So I wanted to call out. These numbers don't touch on. There's been about 250 million packets transferred in about the past 30 days on the network. So we are starting to see a sizable uptick in usage on the network. I think that's about 1.25 billion what we call data credits, which is the unit of measure that we bill on to transfer data on the network. I wanted to call out this quote. I think it's really exciting because we're sort of associated in the crypto space. It generally receives a lot of speculation. And oh, do you have notes for me? Beautiful. Appreciate it. Thank you. It's much better than this small screen. Kevin Roos for the New York Times is typically considered a crypto critic. And so when he discovered Helium, I think it was really exciting for him to write this quote that we're starting to see this move away from speculation of NFTs, of DeFi, a lot of the things that there's probably folks in this audience that enjoy and play in that realm. And there are probably plenty of folks in this audience that have high skepticism. And I sort of empathize with sort of both parties in that regard. For context, when I joined the Helium Foundation, I was not really doing a lot in the crypto space. So I think it's exciting that we can start taking some of the best parts of those models, which is decentralization and permissionlessness, and applying that to wireless networks. So now you can go and deploy and use the network without having to go talk to me. You can go read our docs, and you can set up your own console and router and devices on the network, and you can do it in a way that you completely control. Yeah. All right, we're doing 2 clicks now. So just some more little exciting notes here. Because of the fervor that has existed around this project, this has been the fastest and largest IoT or really wireless network rollout in the world. And it's all LoRaWAN. So speaking to just like the rising tides for all boats, I see the rollout of LoRaWAN on the Helium network as a really strong opportunity for all of the LoRaWAN ecosystem to be able to grow and sort of build new venues for deployment. I'm not a big fan of reading notes on screen, so I'll let you all exercise your ability to do so. Through all of the sort of success here, too fast, we've seen a pretty good amount of acceptance of the LoRaWAN that we've rolled out. So all of the folks on the screen here are partners that have leveraged or are selling solutions that are sort of catered to the Helium deployment of LoRaWAN that we've rolled out today. And I think it's also exciting to see, and we had our award ceremony last night, sort of celebrating this partnership that we did with the Senate. But we're doing roaming with existing LoRaWAN operators now. And so I think it's really nice to see that these long-term players are sort of recognizing the opportunity of this much bigger rollout of LoRaWAN, so they can roam their services onto a sort of backup protocol and extend their coverage or extend the service level of what they are currently offering. So we're up to about 5 now. So and a sort of a couple of other folks in the pipeline, I'm told. But, bup, bup, bup. Oh, all right, this is tricky. All right, so as people are setting up Helium gateways, I think the other thing that's neat is that we see folks that have taken this step to set up and build the Helium network. And then they end up asking themselves, what's the next step here? And this is sort of one of my call to actions to this audience, is to recognize that there is this massive community of literally hundreds of thousands of people that have now set up LoRaWAN gateways, either in their homes or at their offices or wherever else. And now they're really eager to understand how they can start building solutions leveraging LoRaWAN. And so whether they're trying to solve problems in their personal lives or start to solve problems for their community or businesses, there's a lot of interest and sort of this driving effort to see how we can make this huge network that we've built now sort of leverage it and create a lot of value. And then sort of this last note here that I want to talk on is that Helium basically defines a methodology for setting up wireless networks. So LoRaWAN was the first network that we're rolling out. And for anyone that's been following the Helium project, you've probably heard about our next big push, which is to 5G. So in the United States, we're going to start rolling out 5G CBRS gateways that will allow telco operators to basically roam onto the Helium network the same way we see those existing LPWAN operators do the same. But one thing that I want to call out that's really exciting for this audience, obviously we're not here for 5G, but all of the 5G gateways that are being delivered are also going to have LoRaWAN concentrators in them. So we'll also further extend the LoRaWAN opportunities that come along with it. So one of the concerns that I've heard is that, oh, they're abandoning LoRaWAN, and I'll try to dispel that sort of through the commitment that we've hardware and also just sort of a lot of the other sort of push that we are. So if you look at the marketing right now, it'll say a lot of mobile and 5G things, but LoRaWAN's not going anywhere. We spent a long time building this network, and we're definitely in it for the long haul there, as you should be with LoRaWAN. Nobody's deploying solutions for a 4 or 6 month window. We want to see long-term deployment. And with that, I'm going to push us to Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, I think there's the 2 microphones, but I'd love to get into some of that. Do it, Daniel. I know you got questions. Please. Oh, yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and repeat his question. So he doesn't. So the question was, will there be 5G in Europe? And obviously, it was a very easy question. So the short answer is no, because the Helium deployment really relies on unlicensed ability to go buy a gateway and plug it into the wall and not have to talk to your regulating body or pay fees or anything like that. So you don't get the scale and sort of that hockey stick growth that you do if you have to say every time you set up a gateway, you have to go talk to somebody to do it. So what we are looking to do instead of 5G in Europe is to start thinking about Wi-Fi offload. So Wi-Fi offload, if you're not familiar, is the ability for your telco to add a provisioning to your mobile device that says when I'm within range of a basically stealth SSID. So it's a Wi-Fi network that's being broadcast out from these gateways that it can then go join and just send data offload. You can augment existing telco networks in the same way that you can with this CBRS deployment. It's really just a different spectrum, but for the end user is effectively invisible. So we're starting with the 5G deployment in the US, but hope to very quickly start pushing this mobile rollout along through Europe, leveraging Wi-Fi as well. And Wi-Fi also opens opportunities to do, say, public Wi-Fi, which is something that we're also exploring, where you could sort of have a Wi-Fi plan that would leverage Helium and treat it as a mobile hotspot. Yeah.
Hi, Joey.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing well.
So the Helium community, like you said, is very robust. And when we came on the scene about a year and a half ago, it was already robust. Can you talk about what either the core Helium group or the Helium Foundation did in the beginning to get that community rolling? I mean, there's obviously people like yourself and people like others in the Helium core team and the foundation, but was that incentivized by Helium, the company? Was that just an outgrowth of necessity? I mean, and the follow-on with that is, how can other companies follow in your footsteps and mimic some of the things you've done to create community?
That is a great question.
Thanks, Joey.
Yeah. So to sort of answer that, it incredibly was very organic that the community formed as it did. And I think it had to do with, personally, I would expect that it was just because wireless networks were such a new concept to many of the folks in the community, that everyone came in very eager to learn. And as they learned things, they wanted to share things. And it was the snowball effect of people just being very excited about this thing that was previously totally invisible to them, that now they had something to sort of tangibly understand it with. Personally, I walk around cities in a completely different way now. Instead of looking down here, I'm looking at the antennas on people's roofs and trying to figure out what's going on up there. And I think anyone that's deployed a Helium gateway can commiserate with that. But how to sort of push that forward? I think I had the number up there, but we run a Discord server where anyone in the community can kind of come in and ask questions or work on projects and showcase things. And we have people that are really passionate about doing that. A great set of moderators. I always have to offer a shout out to the moderators who sort of keep that community going. I think there's something like 180,000 participants in that Discord now, which I was never a Discord user before, but apparently that is a large Discord server. So yeah, and then I think projects are another key part of that story, where people, again, want to start understanding how to involve themselves in this, and they're eager to learn. So offering opportunities for them to go buy some off-the-shelf components and start putting together a device. We run a project called Mappers, and it's an ability for community members to build and provision their own GPS tracker using generally off-the-shelf components, and then they wander around their own towns mapping out the Helium network to better understand their own gateway, or to better sort of prove the coverage in that area, so that they can go to their community and say that we're ready for sensors here. Yeah, keep them coming. I love this part.
How do you manage the SLA and the commitment for customers and users?
Yeah, it's kind of an evolving question, right? Typically, an SLA is going to be backed by enterprise deployment of gateways that have some 1.1 or 1.2 overlap with all of the other gateways in that area. They will probably have battery backups, their enterprise grade hardware, your Cisco and Tectelic, like big heavy boxes, right? And there's also going to be redundancies on your LNS and sort of the full stack. I think there's a really neat pivotal way to think about redundancy and service guarantees for the Helium network, which is that commonly in these cities, you have not just 1 or 2 Helium gateways per kilometer, you have 20 or 30 Helium gateways per kilometer. So in dense urban areas, you have the opportunity to have not only different hardware manufacturers, you'll have different internet connections, possibly different sections of the power grid. When we start thinking about, as trivial as somebody's cat knocking the plug out of the wall, you end up immediately falling back to the neighbor's gateway. And it's a harder thing to define as an actual contract to an end user. But personally, I've had my gateway go offline because my internet failed or something along those lines, but I had no interruption to my devices. And I think where we have opportunity is also to start adding redundancy across effectively our LNS. So we run Helium Console, and we've been driving a big push now for other entities in the community and in enterprise to start running their own services and building their own robustness around that part of the infrastructure as well. Whereas previously it was basically just us running that as sort of demo. Everything was open source, but everyone, well, we were running it, so nobody else needed to. So now we have on our service a 10 device cap, so that we're sort of pushing people to start thinking about all of the other partners in the ecosystem that they can go to run this service. So, yeah.
Just a question about the incentive structure and the cryptocurrency involved, and given the wild fluctuation in cryptocurrency prices in general, if I, as a user organization of LoRaWAN, want to use the Helium gateway, is the pricing based on the unit of the cryptocurrency, or my own, dollars or euros, for example?
Yeah, I had a slide talking about pricing, and then I took it out. So I'm really glad that you asked that. It was actually a really strong consideration when designing the network that the people using the network are not going to want to think about weird fluctuating prices. And we see that in retail and things like that when people try to leverage crypto in a sort of consumer setting. So the data credits that we run through the network are of fixed price, and it's I'm going to do it in cents, 1/10,000th of a cent US dollars per 24 byte packet. So that generally sort of common pricing model that you see on a sort of per packet basis. And you can buy those directly, commonly through the Helium console that you're going to leverage, or you can use the Helium token and convert that into data credits at the current price of those tokens. So in other words, the usage of the network is in just fixed dollars, and you don't actually have to pay any attention to the sort of side entity of the Helium token.
How do you validate base station coverage? And are folks doing anything sneaky that you need to prevent against attacks in these sort of decentralized systems?
Mm-hmm. So there are a number of mechanisms that we use to prove coverage, and the Helium mining activity is actually a protocol that we call proof of coverage. And so the way that works is Helium gateways will send out I'm going to call it a LoRa-esque beacon, and that's from gateway to gateway. Those beacons will go out, and then we can sort of use that on-chain. Those activities get recorded to the Helium blockchain, and then we can use that on-chain activity to help validate the actual location of those gateways. It doesn't mean that people try to figure out ways to figure out how to move around that. And we've seen some of that activity. And basically what we're doing is building methodologies internally and also externally to detect and sort of shut down those attacks that we see from folks. So a very common one is, for instance, people will buy a dozen of these gateways and then try to tell us sort of through the assertion of those locations that they are in very geographically different areas. But realistically, they have one antenna cable that's looping all of them together with attenuators attached. And it turns out that's very easy to detect, but it is, of course, something that people try to do. Taking this a step further, there's really interesting conversations happening and some proposals in the community of using real world, basically mapping devices to go around and see if those gateways are sort of in the world. And then you can extrapolate through the expected coverage from where that is to sort of refine and improve that. So, yeah. Is it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, Jerry. First, thanks for the presentation. And the second, I'd like to ask, like, if someone wants to build something on top of not necessarily only LoRa, but also on top of Helium, if the Helium Foundation supports these people who they talk to, what are the process? You have some grants or something like that? I think it'd be interesting to know about.
That is a good prompt, grantee Daniel. So on the Helium Foundation, so I want to call out Daniel and Max run a fantastic service that's called Hotspotty, and is one of the most impressive data visualizations that I've ever seen on top of a map, let alone in the blockchain space. So they're doing very cool things. You should talk to them. From the Helium Foundation, we run a grants program. And so we've actually put together grants to sort of help Hotspotty. We've done things with pilots for wildfire detection. Oh, geez, what are some of the different models for building concentrators? There's sort of a very wide gamut of things that, as long as it is in the best interest of either LoRaWAN as a whole, like we will gladly, help try to fund open source projects around, say it's a new LoRa Mac or something for a particular microcontroller. We love to see growth in the LoRaWAN ecosystem, and also just generally growth for, of course, the Helium project as a whole. And so if you are interested in grants, I would encourage you to visit, the website is helium.foundation instead of .com. And we have some links there that detail our grants program. We try to make it, I know I probably say grants and that sounds really scary. Our grant process is probably the easiest thing that you'll ever come across. We set it up in such a way that you go and give us a less than 500 word summary of what the project is about. We set up a time to do a quick pitch. It's about 30 minutes. We just sort of hear what you're up to, maybe give some feedback on how the project could be better suited as a grant candidate. And then it very quickly either goes to funding or just a couple iterations, and then we sort of get feedback from there. So yeah, I would encourage anyone, if they have any cool ideas around innovating in the LoRaWAN or Helium space, to give that a look. Yeah.
I'll ask a question. Maybe you can repeat it there, Joey, instead of me walking to the microphone. To something that you just said. You have 885,000 huts.
Did you check our number?
I did.
Okay, perfect.
And you mentioned something very interesting, which is also my observation. When you got up there and you said, when you asked people, do they know about helium, they said yes. What do you think that is? I mean, you achieved something pretty impressive. I think 800,000 of those just happened over the past 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think there isn't awareness and recognition
yeah.
of such a global network of this site?
So I'll summarize your question. So the general question is, there's about 886, you said? 885,000 gateways have been deployed. And the question is, why has nobody heard about it yet? And I think the easiest answer is that we're in day 7 or 800 of 2020. so COVID sort of locked us all in, and we haven't been talking to each other. But also, this project has grown really, really quickly. And I think of the audience here, this is the stuff that I get excited about, is the LoRaWAN ecosystem. And a lot of the excitement and fervor for this has actually been largely in the crypto space. So the audience is a little bit mismatched. And actually, through my job, one of my goals is to start opening the communications more with all of the developers and content creators, people who are building cool IoT devices. The cool stuff you'll see on YouTube. I get frustrated every time I watch a YouTube video and somebody is building what would be a perfect LoRaWAN device, but they're using Wi-Fi or something different. And I want to start seeing more adoption and just conversation about LoRaWAN in the broader space. And for hobbyists, I think Helium's LoRaWAN network is a fantastic candidate for people to start going in and trying things out, because there is a very low barrier to entry to setting things up. You don't have to go talking to a sales team or anything like that to get going. But yeah, it's I want I want more LoRaWAN like conversation. I strive for a lot more of that. Yeah, so I think we are running right up to lunch. So I'll be around for a couple minutes if anyone wants to grab me and ask some weirder questions. I'm happy to get into it with you. But thanks for everyone for coming out.